Muy buenas tardes
Good afternoon, everyone.
a esta sesión
We
final
welcome
de
you to
este
this
día.
final session for the day.
Me llamo Scott Isaacson.
My
Soy
name
uno de
is
los
Oscar
que
Isaacson.
ayuda
I
aquí
am
con
one
el
of those that
Centro
helps with the
Derecho y Religión. Y tengo el
Center
privilegio de ser el moderador
for
de
the
esta
study
sesión.
of law and religion, and I am the moderator for this session.
Ustedes tal vez vieron en el
You
programa
perhaps have
que
seen in the
identificó a dos
program
otros
that I
presentadores
identify
para
two
esa
other
sesión,
presenters for this
pero
session,
no,
but
lamentablemente no
unfortunately,
pudieron asistir
they
dos
were not able to
por
attend
diversas razones.
for various
Por lo
reasons.
tanto, tendremos el honor
Given
de
such,
contar con
we
tiempo
have
suficiente
the honor of
para
having
que
enough
nuestros
time so
presentadores
that our
comparen sus
presenters
pensamientos
can share
y
their
posiblemente
thoughts and
permitan un
possibly
debate después.
allow for
Por
a
lo tanto, los
debate or dialogue
aliento a que
afterwards.
piensen en
Therefore, I
preguntas
ask you to
que
think
puedan presentar si quede tiempo.
about questions that you could
Voy a
ask if we
presentar los
have
dos
time.
ponentes hoy
I'm going to
al
present
principio y después
both
ellas
of
pueden
the
hablar.
speakers
Primero
today, and
vamos
then
a
they can speak.
escuchar la
First, we
palabra
will
de
hear from Paulina Corominas Etchegaray.
Ella es una abogada
She
mexicana
is a lawyer,
de
a
25
Mexican
años
lawyer
de
with
experiencia
25
en el
years
campo
of
de derechos
experience
humanos.
in human
Se
rights.
graduó de la Facultad de
She
Derecho de la
graduated from
Universidad
the
Americana en la Ciudad de
Panamerican
México.
Universidad
Y tiene
Panamericana
una
in Mexico City,
maestría en Derechos
and she has a
Universales de la Universidad Carlos
master's
III en Madrid. Además,
degree
ha
from
recibido
the
diversos certificados
Carlos
y
III
diplomados
University,
en
and he
derechos
has
humanos y
several
mediación.
certificates in
Antes de su
is
puesto
a diplomat
actual, dedicó 14
for various
años a la
organizations.
Comisión
Before her
América
current assignment, she
Interamericana
dedicated
de
14
Derechos
years to the
Humanos. Servidor en
Inter-American
la
Commission
Comisión
for
Nacional
Human
de
Rights,
Derechos
and she
Humanos en
served
México.
in the Human Rights
Desde enero
Commission
de
in
2021,
Mexico. Since
la
January
señora
of
Corominas ha dirigido
2021,
la sección de
Ms.
Relaciones
Corominas has
con la
headed
Sociedad
the section
de la
of
Secretaría de Acceso a
the
Derechos e Equidad
Civil
de la
Society
Organización de
of the
Estados
Organization
Americanos,
of American
donde
States,
desempeña
where
un
she
papel
carries out a fundamental role
como enlace entre la
as a
organización
link
y
between the
diversos
organization
grupos
and
de la
various
sociedad
groups
civil y
of
actores
civil society
sociales.
and civil
Y
actors.
después de la
And after
presentación
her presentation,
Paulina, vamos a escuchar
Paulina,
la
we will
palabra
hear
de
from Otilia
Otilia García de Coti.
Luz Garcia de Coti.
Ella
She
es una mujer maya
is
quiché
a
de
Mayan
Guatemala.
woman, Quiche, from Guatemala, and I must say
Hace 50
that
años yo
50
estaba
years
viviendo,
ago, I was
justamente
living
50 años en el país de
50 years
Guatemala
ago, I was
sirviendo
living
como
in the country of
misionero.
Guatemala,
Y el
serving
país
as
de
a
Guatemala
missionary,
aquí tiene
and the
un lugar
country
muy
of
especial.
Guatemala always has a soft spot in my heart.
Ella
She
es asesora del
is an advisor
Emblemático
for
de
the
Mujer
indigenous,
Indígena, del Fondo
from
para
the
el
emblematic
Desarrollo de los
Indigenous
Pueblos
Women's Program
Indígenas
for
de
the
América
development of
Latina.
indigenous peoples in Latin America.
FILAC, se dice.
The association is called FILAC.
Licenciada en Administración
She
Educativa, ha desempeñado diversos
has
cargos
carried out
importantes, entre ellos
various
diputada en
administrative roles,
Ministra de
including
Cultura y Deportes de
Congresswoman, Minister of
Guatemala,
Culture and Sports
representante
in
del Consejo
Guatemala,
Ejecutivo
the
de la
representative
UNESCO
of the
y
Executive Council
experta
of
en pueblos
UNESCO,
indígenas
an
de
expert
las
of indigenous
Naciones
peoples
Unidas.
at the United
También
Nations.
ha impartido
She has also
docencia en
taught
varias universidades,
at
incluida
several
la Universidad
universities,
Carlos
including
III,
University
la
Carlos
Universidad
III,
Nacional Autónoma
Universidad
de México,
Nacional
la
Autónoma de
Universidad
México,
Intercultural
and
Indígena
the
del FILAC.
Indigenous
Se
Intercultural
desempeña
University,
como asesora
FILAC,
de
and she
Madre
serves
para
as an advisor
mujeres
to Madre
indígenas
for
en
indigenous
México.
women in New York.
Dentro del tema general
Within
de
the
la
general
conferencia
theme
sobre
of the
la libertad
conference about
religiosa como
religious liberties
herramienta para la
as a
construcción de la
tool
paz,
for the
el tema que hemos
building of
identificado
peace,
para esta sesión
the theme we have
es la
identified for this
relación
session
entre
is
la
the relationship
democracia
between
y la
democracy
religiosa
and religious freedom,
y viceversa.
and vice versa. I think there is a relationship between the both of them.
Los dos lados. Esperamos que
We
nuestros
hope
presentadores
that our
compartan sus
presenters will share their
pensamientos sobre
thoughts
la libertad
about
religiosa
religious freedom
y su impacto en sus
and the
esfuerzos
impact
y
and their experience.
Muy buenas tardes.
Good afternoon to each and every one of you. Thank you for the presentation. Before anything else, I would like to thank the university. I would like to thank the law school, and all of those people that are behind this organization of this important symposium. And I know there are many people and many volunteers that we see in the hallways, and I wish to extend my thanks. And a special thank you to Cynthia and Denise Lunch for their invitation to participate here. And a very cordial hello to my colleague who will speak with me in this panel, who I met yesterday, but who I already greatly respect and admire. And thank you to each and every one of you that is with us today that allow me to share a few thoughts about the relationship between religious freedom as a tool for building democracy and peacemaking within my area of expertise. And I recognize that this is a topic that requires continuous dialogue. So I will center my thoughts today on two key areas. First, the mandates as to religious liberty, speaking from Estados Americanos, and also from speaking about the National Commission of Human Rights in Mexico. And taking advantage of the extra time we have, I'm going to begin with a brief synopsis of what UEA is. For those of you that are not familiarized with I want you to know that the Organization of United States is the oldest organization in the world, and this was celebrated in 1890. OEA was officially created in 1948 with the subscription of the letter of OEA. This is the forum for political discussion, policy analysis, and decision-making, and it unites leaders from the Americas and the Caribbean. OEA has two strategies that are really important. It has observing countries, and we have 75, and these observe the OEA, but they do not have a vote. And then we have those civil organizations. I am in charge of the link with these different states which have to do with civil society. Civil society, relations with civil society organization is part of. Today we have 701 organizations registered with OEA, organizations that participate in different topics and themes and that have convictions that are very diverse. And we are convinced, since the OEA and the organization, that it is important to talk about the dialogue continuously. And we must do this joined with these organizations and with the civil actors and give voice to all of the civil participants. The interest of these organizations has been multiplied. We received 50 annual applications in order to be registered. Unfortunately, we are slightly behind because I must clarify that the section of civil society organization is me. I am the boss and I do everything else. At times I am a good boss and sometimes not such a good boss. But yes, I want to, I tell you this because OEA has tried to reach these organizations more closely. Of course, we also try to implement on social media. We try to have sessions of the permanent society, General Assembly resolutions that we can have people follow virtually. And this has helped so that more organizations have knowledge about what we do at OEA. And, of course, the organizations of civil society status really play an important role in the goal of OEA, because we know that these organizations of civil society, these actors, so these are the little rock in the shoe of communities that keep people in line, and this is how it should be. OEA, to conclude this synopsis of OEA has three distinct
humanos,
pillars: human
democracia,
rights,
desarrollo
democracy,
integral y seguridad.
security, and
Entonces ahora ya entrando en materia,
civil and societal growth.
señalar que la OEA ha
So I
reconocido
must say
desde
that
sus
OEA
inicios
has
la
recognized since
importancia
its
de la
beginnings
libertad religiosa
the
como un derecho
importance
humano
of
fundamental.
the religion of freedom of
Como ya
religion
se ha
as a
venido
fundamental
indicando
right. As
en
we have
las
said
presentaciones
before,
de este simposio, y
in the
todos y
presentation
todas
of this
aquí
symposium,
presentes
and all
sabemos,
of us know,
normas y estándares universales
we know that there
protegen la
are
libertad de
norms and
pensamiento,
standards
de
that
conciencia,
protect the freedom of
y el
religion,
derecho
of
a
consciousness,
elegir o
and the
adoptar
right
libremente
to
una
elect
religión
or adopt
o
a
creencia
religion.
están presentes en varios
And
instrumentos internacionales. En cuanto a las Américas, estos
in
documentos
the Americas, these
fundacionales
documents that are
incluyen
fundamental
la
include
Carta de la OEA,
the
adoptada en
letter of
1948,
OEA that was adopted in
la
1948,
Declaración Americana
the
de los
Declaration
Derechos y Deberes
of the
del Hombre
Rights
de ese
and
mismo año,
Duties of
el
Man
artículo
that
12
same
de
year,
la Convención
Article 12
Americana
of
sobre
the
Derechos Humanos
Convention,
de
American
1969,
Convention
y
of
más
Human Rights
recientemente
in
la
1968,
Convención Interamericana
and
contra
the
todas las
Convention,
formas de discriminación.
Inter-American Convention Against All Intolerance.
Además,
On top
la
of this,
importancia
the
de la libertad de
importance
conciencia,
of
religión
the
y
freedom
creencias
of
ha
religion
sido
belief
reafirmada a través de diferentes
has been
resoluciones
reformed through
y
different
declaraciones
resolutions
a lo
and
largo de la historia de la
declarations
OEA,
in the history of
incluyendo
OEA,
la Declaración
including
Americana
the
sobre los derechos de
Declaration
los Pueblos Indígenas
about the
de
rights of
2016,
indigenous
y el Plan de Acción
peoples
del Deseo
and the
de
plan
las
of
y los
action
afrodescendientes en las Américas, que va
as
de
to the
2016 al 2018.
Afro-descendants in the
Destaco
Americas.
estas dos porque
And I
la
speak of
Secretaría
these
de
two
Acceso a
because
Derechos y Equidad
the
es la encargada de hacer
we
seguimiento
are the
a
chapter that
estas,
takes
a
care
estas
of these
declaraciones,
declarations
planes,
and these
y
plans,
de impulsar la
and
ratificación por parte de
we
los estados,
make
sobre
sure that
todo
they are ratified by
de las
each one of the
convenciones
participants
también
and
contra la
the
discriminación.
states against discrimination.
Por su parte, la Comisión Interamericana, que como
The
ya comenté,
Inter-American
trabajé
Commission,
varios años ahí,
and
pero
as we've mentioned, I
ahora
worked there several years,
solo trabajamos de la mano,
and now we
y
work hand in hand.
ha publicado
They have
recientemente un
published
informe,
recently some
fue a
information.
inicios de,
This was
lo
at the
aprobó
beginning,
en septiembre del año
this was
pasado, pero
approved
se
of
publicó
September of
a
last year,
inicios de este año y
and it
lo
was
encuentran en su
published at the
página
beginning
web.
of the year, and you can find this
Este
on
es
their
un
website.
informe
This is
son
some information.
estándares
These are
internacionales sobre
international
libertad de
standards
religión y
about the
creencia.
freedom of religion and belief.
Está pendiente y esperamos
This is
que
pending,
pronto se
and we
lleve a
hope
cabo
that
una
soon
sesión del
we will
Consejo
have a
Permanente de
session
la
of the
OEA
Permanent
para
Council of
discutir
OEA in order to talk
importante informe
about this important
que no
document,
me voy a meter en detalle, pero
and I'm
ha
not going
también
to
causado
talk about it too deeply, but it has caused some
visiones encontradas en cuanto a
distinct
sus contenidos.
perspectives
Por eso es
as
importante
to
que
its
exista,
contents.
este
That's
Consejo
why it's important that we
Permanente, y les invito
carry
a
out this
seguir
permanent council,
la página
and I
de
invite
la
you to
OEA
follow
para que
the
estén
OEA
enterados y
page
enteradas de
so
cuándo
that
se
you
lleva a
may
cabo.
know when it's going to take place.
En años recientes,
In the recent years,
quiero destacarlo
and
también,
I want to highlight this as well,
la Asamblea General de la
the
OEA, que es su
General
órgano
Assembly of the
supremo,
OEA, which is
ha
its
reforzado este
primary
compromiso con la promoción de la libertad
organism,
religiosa
has talked about
mediante la
this
aprobación
promotion
de
of religious
resoluciones
liberty
denominadas
through the promotion
fortalecimiento de la protección y
of the
promoción
protection
del
and
derecho a
promotion
la
of
libertad de
the
conciencia
right
y
to
religión
believe
o
and
creencia. En la
practice whatever
resolución de este
religion you
año
wish. In the
se
resolution
reiteró
of this
la
year, it was
importancia de los
reiterated
estados
the
de
importance of the
respetar la
states to
pluralidad de
respect
religiones,
the plurality of
creencias,
religions,
credos y
beliefs,
espiritualidades, teniendo
and
en cuenta el
spiritualities,
principio de
taking
igualdad y
into
no
account
discriminación. Asimismo, los
the
estados manifestaron su
that
preocupación
we must be
por el aumento
equitable,
del odio por razones de religión o creencia.
and we have seen the promotion
Condenaron también
that
toda
it has been
forma de
condemned
violencia e intolerancia
that we will
por
not
razón de
condone any type
religión
of
o creencia
violence or
o en
intolerance
nombre de ella.
given the difference of religions
Y
or beliefs,
reconocieron que la
and they have
destrucción
recognized that the
deliberada o
destruction
actos
or the
contra lugares de
acts
culto y
against
sitios
places of
religiosos
worship and
menoscaba
peoples
la capacidad de las personas
will
para rendir culto y
incapacitate
socavaban
people
el
in
derecho
order to
a
be
la
able to
libertad
worship,
de conciencia,
and these
religión
were
o
going
creencia.
against the freedom of
Por
religion
otra
or
parte,
belief.
el secretario
On
general de
another
la OEA,
hand,
a través de
the
comunicados
General
de
Secretary
prensa,
of OEA,
ha emitido
through
declaraciones con
different
respecto a la
documents, has
promoción y
given
protección
declarations
de
about
la
the
libertad de
promotion and
religión o
declaration
creencia.
of the freedom of religion and belief.
Señaló el 2023,
And in
febrero de
2003
2023 y febrero de este año,
in
se
February
dieron
of
dos
this year,
declaraciones en este
we
sentido,
saw two
y en las
declarations,
mismas se reitera
and
el derecho
that
de toda persona
it
a
is
identificarse
reiterated
con una
that each
creencia
person
o religión particular,
can
como de cambiar de
believe
confesión
what they want
e
and they can
incluso de
change
no contar
religions.
con
In
aquellas
fact, they can
A través
say
de
that
estas
they don't
declaraciones,
belong
la
to any certain
Secretaría
religion.
General
Through these
insta a
declarations,
los
the
Estados
General
miembros
Secretary has
a
invited the
priorizar el
participating
desarrollo de
states to
garantías que reconozcan la
pluralize
libertad
the
y la
development
pluralidad
of
religiosa
these
como pilares para
guarantees
fortalecer
so that
las
they may be
democracias,
pillars in
promover diálogos que
building
involucren a
democracy.
comunidades religiosas,
They can build
así
dialogues that
como a
grant
practicantes y
freedoms
líderes
to
espirituales, en la
religious
elaboración
faiths,
de normas que protejan a
and
las
that we
minorías
create
religiosas,
rules that protect
prevengan
these
la discriminación
minorities,
por
that we
motivos
must
de
prevent
religión
discrimination
y eviten el uso indebido del
through
discurso religioso
because
para
of
violar otros
religion,
derechos
and we
humanos.
must not also use hate
Crear
speech.
espacios para la participación y el
We must
reconocimiento
create
mutuo,
spaces for
tanto a nivel
participation
local como
and
multilateral, entre los
recognition,
Estados miembros,
both local and
organizaciones de la
multilateral,
sociedad civil
within the
y grupos
organizations and
religiosos
member
y
states
espirituales,
and religious
entendiendo que
groups
esos espacios
and spiritual groups. It's understanding that these
pueden
spaces
fomentar la
can
interacción entre las
promote
diversas
the
religiones y
interaction within different
espiritualidades
religions and
dentro de nuestro
spiritualities
hemisferio,
within our
al tiempo que
hemisphere.
apoyan la
And at the
educación
same
y el
time, they can
intercambio
promote
sobre
the
su
education
riqueza de
and
expresiones,
exchange
manifestaciones y
of
puntos de vista.
manifestations
Este
and
enfoque
points of view.
enfatiza el
This
papel de la
focus
religión y la
emphasizes the
espiritualidad
role of
en la
religion and
construcción y
spirituality
fortalecimiento de
in
la
the
democracia y la promoción
promotion
del
of
bienestar
democracy
social,
and
uniendo
the
estados,
good of
líderes religiosos,
communities.
comunidades de fe, sociedad
We see
civil,
civil
movimientos
society,
sociales, organizaciones
civil
internacionales,
and
y
civic
sirven así como
movements,
una herramienta
and
para la construcción de
these
paz.
can be a tool
Estas
for the building
declaraciones
of
y
peace. These
resoluciones son muy
declarations and
importantes. Son un
resolutions
reconocimiento de la
are very
obligación de lo que
important.
tienen los
These
estados,
are
que ellos
a
mismos
recognition
se
of the
imponen.
obligation
Pero deben de
that the
traducirse
states
sin
have,
duda en
and they
acciones
must be
concretas.
translated
El
into concrete
reconocimiento de diversas
actions.
creencias
The
y prácticas
recognition of
espirituales
different
debe reflejarse en
beliefs
políticas
and practices
públicas,
must be
diálogo y
reflected in
colaboración
dialogue and
inclusiva en niveles
laws.
más amplios. Referirnos a la libertad
When we talk
religiosa de
about
creencia desde
religious
el ámbito
freedom and
internacional
belief
implica no solo
from
crear
the global
mecanismos
perspective, we
para
must not
reconocer la
only
presencia
apply
de grupos de fe
mechanisms that
sino
defend
también
specific groups,
reconocerla
but we
como un
must
derecho
also recognize that this is an
intrínsecamente
intrinsic
vinculado
right
al respeto y la promoción
tied
de
directly
otros,
to the respect and promotion
de
of
otras
others,
identidades,
the other
expresiones,
identities,
libertades
expressions,
y derechos.
freedoms, and
En las
rights.
Américas, así como
In the
otras partes
Americas
del mundo,
and in
todas
other
partes
parts
del
of the
mundo,
world,
como bien hemos escuchado en las diferentes intervenciones
as we have heard
en
in
este
different
simposio, el pluralismo es un
meetings,
elemento clave
pluralism
debido a la rica
is
diversidad
a
de
key
expresiones
element
que tenemos,
given the right that we have to
religiosas y
express
espirituales
ourselves,
presentes en nuestro
religious
país.
expressions
Eso sin duda
that we
nos da
find
un
within
gran
our
valor.
communities, and this gives us great value.
Esto enfatiza la importancia
This
de que los
emphasizes
Estados
the
miembros
importance
prioricen
of
el
member
desarrollo de
states,
garantías
and
legales
they
y
must
políticas que
prioritize
reflejen esa diversidad, que
laws
reflejen la
that reflect this
importancia
diversity and that
del
reflect the
diálogo y de
importance
buscar
of dialogue
metas
and
comunes,
of
y destacar
fostering
y promover
and
el
develop
pluralismo
goals that we have in
religioso y de
common and
creencias
have
como base de las democracias.
plural religions that we can find
Como
within
parte de ese
democracies.
esfuerzo, también los
As part
mandatos
of
de la OEA
this work,
y
the
las declaraciones
declarations
hechas
of
por el
OEA
general
and
impulsan a crear espacios
the
de diálogo
declarations
e
given by the
intercambio
General
como
Secretary
en los que
ask
se
us
incluyan
to
a
include
representantes de estados
representatives of states and civil society.
Y eso me lleva al
And this
segundo
takes
punto
me to the
de mi
second point
presentación
of
del
my
día de hoy,
presentation
que
today,
es el papel
which
de la
is the
Sección de
role
Relaciones con Sociedad Civil y de la
of civil
Secretaría de
society
Acceso a Derechos y
and
Equidad en la
the
promoción de estos mandatos
Commission
que tiene-
of Human
que tiene
Rights
nuestra
in the
organización.
promotion of these.
El éxito de estos mandatos requiere no solo un fuerte impulso y
We
compromiso
must
por parte de las instituciones estatales,
protect
sino también de la
these
disposición
declarations and
de los actores
resolutions,
de sociedad civil
and it must also
para
be
fomentar
imposed
la libertad religiosa.
and carried and exercised by
Por lo
these
tanto, es
civil
crucial
servants in
encontrar
order to
áreas de
protect. So it is
convergencia
crucial
que
that we
permitan
find
avanzar
areas of
y
convergence
colaborar de manera
that allow us to
participativa,
advance and
donde las
collaborate,
comunidades de fe
where
juegan un papel central.
faith communities play an
Ciertamente es más
important
fácil
role.
decirlo
It is
que
important
lograrlo.
to
Sin
say
embargo,
it,
espacios
but it's
como el
harder
que
to do it.
nos encontramos hoy, que
But
nos
spaces
encontramos
like
estos
in
días,
which we find
nos
ourselves
demuestran que es
today
posible.
demonstrates that this is possible.
Para la OEA, la
For
colaboración entre
OEA,
religiosos es fundamental
collaboration with other
para
religions is
desarrollar
fundamental
oportunidades y espacios
in order to
para el
develop
compromiso
opportunity and
multilateral.
space
Permite que
so
grupos
that we have
religiosos y
opportunities.
comunidades de fe
It allows
participen
civil
activamente y
groups
contribuyan
and
a
religious
abordar los
groups to come
principales
together
desafíos que
to
enfrentamos
talk
nuestros
about
países en la
the
región.
difficulties that our countries
Las
face.
resoluciones a las que me
Resolutions
refería
that I
hace
am
un momento
referring to
llama a los Estados miembros
calls
a
the
crear
member
espacios,
states
como ya lo
to
decía,
create
que
spaces
faciliten estas interacciones.
to facilitate these
Y da
interactions.
también, reitero,
And it
la
also
relevancia de la
reiterates
educación
the
y el
relevance of
intercambio
education and the exchange of
En este punto
expressions.
quiero
At
destacar
this
un
point, I
evento
want
que se
to
llevó a
talk
cabo
about
en septiembre
something that took
de
place in
2023
September of
como
2023
cumplimiento a uno de esos mandatos.
as
crecimiento y fue apoyado desde
This event
la Sección y
was
desde la Secretaría de Acceso a Derechos y Equidad. Y
given by my
fue,
chapter, and it was something that was
impulsado por
promoted
algunos estados, especialmente
by
Estados Unidos.
some
Y fue un
countries,
evento
specifically,
realmente exitoso. Fue
in particular
un
United States,
evento
and this was
en el que
truly
contamos
a beautiful
con
event.
presentaciones de estados,
We had
de
presentations
líderes
from
religiosos
different
y de
states.
país y de matrices
We had leaders
africanas e
of
indígenas, así por-
and
como por
representatives
supuesto
of
representantes de
indigenous groups from
sociedad.
Africa,
Esperamos
and
replicar este evento
we hope to
próximamente.
replicate this event soon.
Veo que ya pensé que
I'm
me
s-
iba a
I
faltar
thought-
mucho para llegar a los 20 minutos, pero veo
I
que
thought I
estoy
was going to have
acercando.
much more than
Este,
20 minutes, but
Nuestro objetivo desde
Our
la Sección de
objective
Relaciones con Sociedad Civil, como les decía, es
is
ser un puente
is to
con
be a
las
bridge
organizaciones.
with
Estas
these organizations. These
ya se
organizations
imaginarán,
that you can
701
imagine,
organizaciones, son
these
diversas,
701
trabajan
organizations are diverse.
mucho- en todos los
They
pilares
work
que ya les
in
comenté
all the
del trabajo
different
de la OEA,
pillars
y
that we mentioned in
sabemos que
OEA,
son la piedra
and we know that
angular
they
de un
are
hemisferio- para conseguir
the
un hemisferio
cornerstone in
más
order to
democrático.
be able to have a hemisphere that is more
Un ejemplo
democratic
importante,
and
o el
inclusive.
principal
An
ejemplo de
important
esta
example
participación
is
en las asambleas generales.
in the General
En este
Assemblies.
espacio,
In this
la OEA
space,
da un
OEA
espacio primordial
gives a
para la
space
participación
for the
de las
participation
organizaciones
of the
sociales.
organizations of civil
Es
society.
una mañana entera
It is
en un espacio
a
con
morning
los Estados miembros,
where the
con el
member
secretario
states
general
come
y el secretario
and they
general
have the
adjunto,
General
y
Secretary
participan.
and they
Tenemos generalmente la
participate. We
participación de
have the
aproximadamente
participation of
500
approximately
personas, que
500
representan
people
más de
that represent
350
more than
organizaciones.
350
Todas esas
organizations.
organizaciones
All of these organizations are
Y no siempre
diverse,
se logra,
and
por
we
supuesto,
don't
la
always have
armonía en la
the
participación.
harmony in
Sin
participation.
embargo, la OEA está
But
comprometida
OEA
en este espacio, en mantener
is
este espacio y en mantener esta
deliberately trying to
pluralidad
conserve these
y en
forums and these
escuchar a
spaces
todas
and
las
this
voces.
plurality so that all voices
Convencida
can
de
be
que,
heard.
repito,
Convinced
esto promueve
that this
la democracia.
that this promotes democracy in our hemisphere.
Me voy a saltar.
I'm going to skip a few
Antes de
spots.
cerrar,
Before I
simplemente,
close, I would
tomando
simply,
esta última
and taking
experiencia
this
de los diálogos
experience that I
en las
shared about
asambleas
dialogues in
generales,
the General Assemblies,
experiencia personal,
my
trabajando
personal
con
experience
tantas
working
personas,
with all of
con
these people,
tantas,
and
con muchas veces convicciones
with all of
encontradas,
these
quisiera
convictions
destacar la
that
importancia de
seem
estos
at
eventos.
times to be at odd, I would like to
Eventos como este,
emphasize the
para
importance of
recordar que
events
somos
like this one,
personas diversas,
to remember that
con
we are a
creencias y
diverse
religiones
people
diversas,
with
o sin
different
ellas,
religious beliefs,
pero con la
or
obligación de
perhaps we don't
aprender
have beliefs,
de la
but
otra
we have the
persona,
conviction
ser
of
inclusivas y de
understanding
trabajar de la
and learning
mano,
of others people,
tomando
to
en
be
cuenta esas
inclusive
diferencias,
and learning from
siempre
other
con
people,
base
taking
en
into
respeto,
account the difference of
buscar
other
unidad
people, always
en
looking
esas
for unity
diferencias para
and the
buscar el bien
respect
común.
for differences and always looking for peace. Thank you.
Muy buenas tardes a
Good
todas y
afternoon
todos.
to each and every one of you.
En primer lugar, pues,
First of
quiero
all, I would like to
agradecerle
thank
a mis ancestras y
my
ancestros,
ancestors,
a mis abuelas y
my
abuelos,
grandmother
darme
and
la
grandfather,
oportunidad de compartir
for giving
con
me the
ustedes,
opportunity to share with you today,
señoras y señores,
ladies and gentlemen,
juventudes que también tuve la oportunidad de saludar.
and other youths that I had the opportunity to say hello to in my language and also in Quiché,
Por allá en Misión.
like I did
Guatemala.
with another young man that served a mission in Guatemala.
Al llegar yo por acá,
When I got here,
a los primeros que saludé,
the
fue
first people I said hello
prácticamente a
to
las
was
sagradas
practically
montañas.
the sacred mountains.
Porque para nosotros
Because for
y
us,
nosotras,
and
como pueblos indígenas
as
de la
an indigenous
Abya Yala,
people
de la cual voy
from
a hablar.
Abya Yala, which I will speak about,
La Abya Yala tiene sus
Abya Yala
pueblos
has
originarios
its
y tiene sus
towns,
nombres
and
también
it also has its names
originarios.
that are original.
Y pueblos indígenas
And indigenous,
nos lo adoptamos de esa manera
peoples,
por cuestiones jurídicas
we adopted that
en
name
relación a los
given
instrumentos
given
internacionales,
different
como lo es la
laws
Declaración de los Derechos de
that
los
we
Pueblos
read,
Indígenas de las Naciones
specifically in the
Unidas
Declaration
y
of the
los
Rights of
derechos
Indigenous Peoples
de los pueblos
and the
indígenas de la
rights of indigenous
Organización de
peoples
Estados
from the
Americanos.
organization
Por cuestiones
of
jurídicas es que lo utilizamos.
OEA. And we use
Pero
this
nosotras y nosotros como pueblos
as
tenemos
a
nuestros
people,
nombres
and we have our
originarios.
own names, our original
Yo soy
names.
Maya Quiché,
I am Maya Quiché,
de la Guatemala, que
from
correspondía a la
Guatemala
Mesoamérica,
that corresponded to Mesoamerica, where there was
franco
one
en aquel entonces,
language
antes de la
before the
colonización, y
colonization,
esa lengua franca
and
era el
that
náhuatl.
tongue was
Por eso mi
Nahuatl.
querida Guatemala
And that is
tiene
why my
nombres
beautiful
náhuatl,
Guatemala has names
¿verdad?
from
Pero
this
no quedó
language,
ningún grupo
Nahuatl.
náhuatl ahí, sino que
But there
se
is no
fueron hasta
remaining
El
group of
Salvador,
Nahuatl, and they went all the way to
y
El
se entiende
Salvador.
muy bien con
And
varios
they
estados de los estados mexicanos.
It can speak to several states of the country of
Gracias
Mexico.
a Karen
Thank
Rodas
you
por
to Karen Rodas
haberme
for having
invitado y
invited me
materializado
and
esa
materialized
invitación,
this
en la cual
invitation,
yo me siento
in
muy
which I feel
agradecida y complacida
extremely
de estar aquí
grateful
con
and
ustedes
happy
por
to be
primera
here
vez.
with you for the first
Y
time.
les juro que es la
And I
primera
swear
vez
to you
que yo oigo así en el fondo,
that it's the first time I
más o
hear
menos, ¿me entiendo?
in the back, and I can kind of
Sobre
understand
La
what it,
iglesia, mormona.
and I come to understand some things
Primera
from
vez en
about the
Etchegaray.
Mormon church. This is the first
lo
time
oigo escuchar aquí
in my life, and I
en el
come to
lugar
hear it
sagrado
here in their
de
sacred
los
place
mormones, ¿no?
of the
Y
Mormons.
enhorabuena,
And that is
lo
good
consideramos de esa forma,
because we
porque esa es
consider
mi
it this
mirada,
way because this is how I
esa
see
es
it.
mi visión.
That is my vision.
Tenemos lugares
We
sagrados.
have sacred
Los
places.
pueblos indígenas tenemos
Indigenous
lugares
peoples
sagrados,
have sacred
y es
places,
en la cual
and this is
riñe con
where
el sistema que
we
nos ha
find,
dominado siempre.
and it is
Ese
at times
sistema
at odds with the
para
system that
nosotros,
has tried to dominate us. This system for
los pueblos
us,
indígenas,
the indigenous peoples,
antidemocrático, ¿no?
is anti-democratic.
Cuando
When
leía yo el título,
I was reading the
no le
title,
quise preguntar a
and I
Karen,
didn't
pero
want to ask
yo
Karen,
decía,
but I would
América
say
Latina,
Latin
democracia
America,
y libertad
democracy,
religiosa.
and religious freedom.
Bueno, dije de repente me
Well,
invitan
I thought
para
perhaps they're
escucharme
going
desde la
to
espiritualidad
invite me
de los
to
pueblos indígenas.
speak of the spirituality of the indigenous peoples, not religion.
Nosotros, los pueblos indígenas,
The religious
no
people,
tenemos religión.
indigenous people, we do not have religion.
Nosotras y nosotros practicamos
We
la
practice
espiritualidad
spirituality, indigenous
basada
spirituality, and it is based
en la madre tierra.
on Mother Earth.
Está basada
It is
en las
based
abuelas y los abuelos,
on the grandfathers and
quiénes son los
grandmothers.
abuelos y las-
And
y
who
las
are the
abuelas?
grandfathers and grandmothers?
quienes nos antecedieron antes
Those
de
that came
aparecer el
before
hombre y la
us,
mujer.
before man and woman
Las
came.
montañas, los
The man,
volcanes, los
the
ríos,
mountains,
los
the
animales,
volcanoes, the
etcétera,
rivers, the
etcétera.
animals, etc., etc.
Ellos y ellas son nuestros abuelos. y
They
abuelas.
are our ancestors,
De ahí
our
nosotros
grandmothers and
aparecemos como
grandfathers.
mujer y hombre.
From here we appeared as man
Eso
and
dice
woman.
en nuestras
That is what it
historias.
says in our stories.
Eso dice en
That is what it
nuestro
says
libro
in
sagrado,
our
el
book,
Popol
in our
Vuh.
sacred book, Popol Vuh.
Entonces, por eso
And
siempre
so that is why
entramos
we always
agradeciéndole a las abuelas y a los
start
abuelos.
by thanking our
Pero los
grandmothers and
contadores del
grandfathers.
tiempo de nuestros
But
pueblos
the
nos han
counters
enseñado
of
a
time
contar el
of our
tiempo.
peoples
Y hoy
have taught
estamos en
us
el número 9
to count time. And today
de
we are
nuestro
in
calendario Maya,
number
y
9
nosotros le
of our Mayan
denominamos
calendar,
Belejeb Canil.
and we call it Belejeb
¿Qué es eso de
Canil.
Belejeb Canil?
And what is Belejeb
9,
Canil? 9,
semilla.
seed.
¿Y qué es para nosotros?
And what is it for
Nosotros
us?
la semilla,
What is the seed for us?
prácticamente la
Well,
semilla
practically,
que se siembra
it
en
is a
el
seed that is
pensamiento,
sown in thought,
que se siembra en los
that is sown
conocimientos,
in the
que
knowledge,
se planta, ¿no?
and that is planted.
Crece,
It
germina
grows,
en
it germinates in thought.
El día de hoy,
Today,
para mí, desde mi propia perspectiva,
from my point of view, in my
los ponentes de
perspective,
la mañana,
the presenters from this
mi
morning
colega
and my colleague
Paulina,
Paulina
ha sembrado en mí
have planted in me
semillas de
a seed of knowledge,
semillas de sabiduría
Seeds of wisdom,
y semillas que van a
seeds
hacer
that
crecer
will
mi
grow my knowledge.
conocimiento. Porque lo escuchamos en la mañana.
Because what we heard in the morning, and we are also hearing it in the afternoon, this is
Eso
today.
significa para nosotros
This is really meaningful for us indigenous people, the Abjajala. That's why we always talked about Mother Earth. We talked about Pachamama. We talked about the spirit of the mountains. We speak about the Mapudungun, like the Mapuches from Chile said. I would have loved to hear that from them this morning.
dicen los amazónicos,
Like the Amazonic says, spirit of the mountains, and like also Pope Francis says, the common house. So we as mothers, we see the earth as Mother Earth, as a mother. But why do we call it mother?
porque es la que nos alimenta.
Because she's the one that feeds us.
La Madre Tierra
Mother Earth
para nosotros
is for
la
us
única
the only one that's going to give us medicine.
es la que nos facilita
Is the
el agua
one
para la
that
vida
provides us the water for life.
y es la que nos da
And she's the one that also
prácticamente descansar.
provides us rest.
Cuando nosotros estamos hablando de
When
esto,
we are talking about
nos
this,
hace recordar
these help us remember, they help us recall when I was a child, how I was educated, how the only grandma that I had educated me, and how my parents educated me, meaning my father and my mother.
en primer lugar
In the first place,
un conocimiento y
we had a knowledge and a learning, a collective learning and teaching. First,
nuestro altar
in the house, with the altar,
que teníamos.
you know, the lot that we had right next to the house, the altar.
Ese altar para
And that
nosotros
altar to us is the tangbal, and tangbal exists in every single
y ahí
house.
se nos enseñaba
And that's where we were taught about the energy of the day, and the farming and the harvest that we would do throughout the year.
pero también aprendimos
But we also learn great values from mother and from father.
a mí se me enseñó por ejemplo
I was
de que
taught, for
tenía que
example,
medir
that I had to measure, I had to
en
count
unas cajitas que en
the
Guatemala
seeds
le
on very tiny boxes,
o almud,
that tiny boxes which we call almud, an Arab word brought from the Europeans that settled South America and Central America and Guatemala. We had the almud.
decía mi papá, vas
And my father used to say, hey, the daughters, you will count the grains of beans and corn, and you need to put this on the 5-kilogram box, but you need to count it very well, not an additional grain, not an additional grain, not a missing grain. And when I minister of state, I told myself, how do I do this? How can I apply my parents' wisdom and apply it here or translate it into public policy?
entonces agarré este ejemplo.
So I saw this example. I said to myself, we have to be fair, we have to be just, we have to be transparent. So that's when ethics rule.
La ética
So
que
ethics,
yo mamé
the ethics that I obtain at home is the ethics that continued throughout all my life until I became a social
de esta manera pienso yo.
servant. And this is the way I think. This is what we live when we really learn from ever since we're children. And I learned about interconnectivity,
En que somos parte,
that we are part of the fabric of life.
se nos enseñó a respetar
We are
todos los
taught,
granos.
we were taught to respect every single seed, every single grain. We were taught to respect the water. We were taught to respect the soil.
Entonces, esa conexión que
So
teníamos
that
siempre con la tierra,
connectivity that we had, we never forgot about
por
that.
otro lado,
On the other
se
hand,
nos dijo que éramos
we were taught that we were dual
y se
people.
nos sigue diciendo que
And,
somos duales.
and we are still being told that we are dual when we are in front of the sacred fire, especially the Mayan from Guatemala. And then when we set up the sacred fire, that's when we are reminded that we are dual people. And we are told that we are dual because men and women, we complement each other.
Noche y el día son
Day and night are complement each other.
de esta manera.
This way, that's how we understand being complemental. On the other hand,
Nos enseñó también
we were also taught
un término muy utilizado
a
por abuelas
term which was very much used by our grandparents.
y nos decía
They would tell us, I'm going to say this in Quiche,
cada vez que hacíamos una travesía.
each time we would misbehave, they would say, aguas.
Y ese término para nosotros
And that term to us, that stayed in our minds. And that term means
interconectividad,
the interconnectivity between the older people,
mayoras,
the older fathers, the older mothers, and the children. maintaining respect. We have to show respect for our elders, and we were taught to respect our elders all of our lives. Every time we would see an elderly person, downtown in the middle of the city, we would say hi to him, and we would do that reverently, because that's the ultimate wisdom, the one that comes from the elderly people. If we would not say hi to them, then they would say, you have to show respect for your elders. This is how we learned in great values, like always being grateful. There's reciprocity here. We reciprocate, all us women. We have to show reciprocity with our Mother Earth. And we are in front of the sacred fire. We ask for forgiveness because all the damage that we're doing to Mother Earth. And there's a concept and there's a connectivity with climate change, because we're messing up with the Earth. We are affecting it, and we are affecting it with this measured extra activity. We're extracting minerals. World Bank just published a document where they said where gold was to be found, silver, and all those precious metals are in our area, in the Etchegaray area, where mountains are. This is why the Latin American countries. This is why we cannot be governed, because we don't apply a principle that us indigenous peoples have, which is part of an international document, which is OIT document number 166, which is the survey. I'm speaking as a woman and as a member of an indigenous people. We are people with rights, and we are peoples with power, because we have power. And we are also people of rights. We have some rights, of course. So we have the right to demand the states, the governments, that they have to consult with us. They have to speak to us when there's a development project. On the other hand, I also speak about respect for dignity. This is an ongoing fight for human beings, fighting for their human dignity. And we've been greatly taught about this today. And I don't mean that maybe someone forgot about the human dignity and keeps on hitting others, but this is human dignity. Respect for human dignity is very important. We are told about consensus and dialogue. We've just had a very important event, trying to defend the constitutional process, to defend the incipient democracy that we have, and that it barely started with the new government. 106 days of resistance from the indigenous peoples, and had we not for the indigenous people, the Guatemalan people would have not risen to defend themselves, to defend this democratic transition, and they could have remained the same with the mafias, with the corruption, they have been part of our government, and who are always taking advantage from us. 106 days of resistance in which the indigenous people, they raised the flag, and they did that through consensus with the Yakatah, that we say indigenous peoples, and then we started moving this process, a process called Yakatahem, what Pablo Freire called awareness and praxis. So then we moved into praxis, and all the organizations got together in Guatemala, urban organizations. They protected and they supported what we indigenous people were proposing. So this way, we've also been able to show that democracy, the Western democracy, can be defended, because we have our own forms of government. Indigenous people, our form of government is through service. The honorable person serves others, and gives to all those that have given to their community. The leaders, those are the ones who are in power. Servants. This is not the type of democracy that we now know. electing and being elected,
Cuestiono la democracia.
because I question Western democracy.
La democracia occidental
Western democracy
no se debe solamente ver
cannot be seen, be just limited to electing, being elected. Democracy has to answer to social policies, social needs, educational policies and needs with quality policies. And we have to promote the welfare for everyone, even in the rural areas. We must provide health for all the women who are dying because they're bleeding out, because they have a health clinic nearby. That's not a democracy.
La democracia debe ser
Democracy has to be participative, representative. Every single people have to be represented in that system.
y no solamente las
And not only the elites.
democracias occidentales.
Western democracies stay in the hands of the elites only. I believe that democracy has to be horizontal.
Y por otro lado,
And on the other hand, I also believe that as women, we fight for an equitative democracy. Mexico is leading the example, is leading the way now. Having
perdón, 200
having a female president after 200 years, when women do not have that power, that right in most of South American countries. So we are now boarding democracy, but we should add also freedom of spirituality, because if we don't do that, the indigenous peoples, we are not visible. And if not, we'll just talk about Western democracy, we'll talk about Western religion, or we'll talk only about Europe and what happened with Abajala and what happened with the peoples. So I believe that in this sense, yes, this is a challenge to all of you, and I would like to finish my final 2 minutes. We all have
retos fundamentales
fundamental challenges with regards that we need to open dialogue, interreligious dialogues, interspiritual dialogue. Oh, she mentioned that. Oh, yeah, OAS has that. But we also need to open intergenerational dialogues, because we'll learn from the elders. And the youth has to learn, and the children, they also have to learn from their elders. We need to open those dialogues. We need to open dialogues, I've already said this, interreligious, intercultural dialogues.
somos muchas culturas.
Too many cultures in the world. There's many cultures. We need to open those intercultural dialogues, because we're all different. We're not the same. We have different ways of life. We have different logics and philosophies. We think differently. Let's open those dialogues. And also, let's open interscientific dialogues. All cultures have their own scientific side. Let's open that dialogue as well. If we open those interscientific dialogues, we'll eradicate completely the one thinking, the dominant thinking, the bosses, and those who say, oh, those are not worth it. We have to open those dialogues, and with this, we'll meet also the intersectional dialogues, because together it is possible. But also, we have to be visible. And on your next meeting, 32nd meeting, please do include indigenous peoples, so you can hear about their spirituality from the Amazon, from the Mapuches, from the Aymaras, from the Alasacas, from the Quiches, from the Tacchiteles. There are several, many in America. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias por la
Thank you very much for the presentations. It makes me recall that for 2 years when I was living in Guatemala, I was taller. If you can understand what I'm saying.
Bueno, ha sido muy interesante.
It's been very interesting to hear these two presentations. We have a few minutes ahead for Q&A, so I will let you ask the questions. Maybe I could mention some things briefly. Regarding OAS, it's interesting that the great majority of the citizens in my home country, they don't even know that OAS even exists. And our home country is not part of that court in the commission. It is in the commission, but not in the court. But in Latin America, my experience has a much bigger influence. It's something that the countries in that area, they realize of what OAS does. And we should learn from this. Because there's a space here. There's a space in OAS for exchange of opinion. And the values of OAS are to reinforce human rights. So I believe that that's a challenge. It's a real challenge for my country, my home country, and to get more knowledge and more interest on OAS. Something that maybe Paulina can explain this a little better is she didn't mention that there is an international court for human rights. And that's a place, that's an international court where if there's a violation of a right, freedom of religion, or any other type of right acknowledged by our states, there is a way. If the country does not make someone responsible, if a country is not helping someone who believes that's being damaged on his human rights, there is a way to go into that international court. This is something that we also should also remember. And Otilia, it was very interesting to listen to her, how the spiritual values, that those deep values that you have influenced your work as a minister and in other areas. And I believe that you are completely right. The indigenous peoples in Latin America have something to share on this debate regarding these subjects that we're talking about today. And this is something that the entire topic, the entire world of human rights represented here in the Americas, we should put more attention to this, to those values. I've read the Popol Vuh, and there's values there, values that can be very important for us. I'm not going to try to summarize it, but I could share some of the ideas from the Popol Vuh that have stuck with me in my life. With that, I'm going to let Paulina, maybe she can explain regarding the International Court. And then I'll give you 10 more minutes for question and answers. Well, yes, quickly, effectively, there's an international court for human rights, and specifically in the Americas, in the Inter-American system of human rights, we have the Inter-American Court. Also, effectively, as he mentioned, as Scott mentioned, the United States is part of this Inter-American Commission, but it has not ratified the competency of the court. There's some states that have not ratified it. What does it mean? That the human rights that have been established as part of the American Convention of Human Rights, when individuals, when people see these rights violated in the respective countries, and Sylvia knows more about this than me, but when they have to, start a process and report a country, oh, my human right has been violated, the last resort that they have is the Inter-American System for Human Rights. First, the Commission. The Commission starts a case, opens a case, and then they issue recommendations for the states. And regarding those countries that have ratify that competency from the court. If those recommendations are not being fulfilled, then the Commission sends the case to the Inter-American Court. The difference here is that the court, issues a sentence, and from there on, those are not recommendations, but those are sentences with obligations that must be fulfilled by the states. Yesterday, we mentioned since other judicial systems, and talking about the backlog and all the cases that come very late to the courts. This is justice, but this is a late justice, delayed justice, and we need to move this forward for the benefit of the victims, who I was fortunate enough to work with some cases, particular cases, and present those to the court. Just making it to that step, to that stage in the process is very important for the victims. Getting securing a sentence, that's very important, but it'll be more important to have the member states to fulfill with those recommendations and sentences. We have a microphone here. Thank you very much, Mr. Scott. Thank you very much, Mr. Scott. And the question is for Dr. Paulina, a very respected person. What level of incidence what incidents have the reports from the state members when they send cases to the Inter-American Court? Those cases, those advices, do those have any type of influence on their sentences, Ms. Paulina? Can I be heard here? Can I? Yes, yes. Well, I wish it had more influence. It does have some influence. We are working on that, trying to find other spaces, not only in the assemblies, but also because the assemblies, when we receive those from the state members, those are a very advanced stage. The contributions from social players are taken into account, but we are looking for a different approach, something that we'll be able to use in between one process and the other, something that we can prepare, something that we can show and present to the state members with more time so they can consider those before it's presented to the assembly.
Otilia,
Disculpen, pero está hablando en algún idioma nativo. I apologize, but he's speaking some native language. I would like to thank especially the heart of the sky, heart of the earth, and also our Creator for giving us life today. And my question, thank you, Otilia, for your hard work throughout all these years. My question is regarding this dialogue, which I believe is very important, interreligious dialogue, intercultural, interspiritual dialogue, interscientific dialogue. What has been done until this day, and what else can be done to keep facilitating this dialogue, not only on these areas, but also on the community areas, our governments? That's my question.
Sí. Ahora, gracias. Muchas gracias aquí a
Thank you very much, to our dear colleague who made a very proper introduction, also thanking the deities that we have, and he thanked heart of the sky, heart of the land, heart of water, the heart of air. And you heard him say that. He said that in Quiche mostly.
Este es un ejercicio, por eso
This is an exercise, and we see it as a fundamental challenge for the societies and for the world.
Que se haga a este nivel.
You know, to hear about this at this level, and at the OES level, also UNESCO has it, but I could say those are initiatives from these organizations, but this should be initiatives from the states for just one simple reason. I could tell you about Guatemala. Guatemala, after the agreements of peace, we named them with holy names. We took it to the Congress of the Republic. It was added to the commissions, to the pertinent commissions, and then we went to the second review, and it was taken out. It was removed. It was removed because of pressure from the Guatemalan elites, because they said, if we approve this law, indigenous will want to have our lands where we have some sacred places from the indigenous perspective. So that was not achieved. But like you said, it should be an initiative by the states. Today that we're in the middle of a democratic process in Guatemala, this could be one of the initiatives, one of the departments or secretaries, you know, the Department of the Sports and Science, because it's under their purview. We should remember what happened in the world. Crimes have been committed in the name of God. Humanity. That has been very counterproductive. In Guatemala, there was a genocide in the name of God, in the name of the state. And the state army government did it against the Maya people. And all the genocides in these last few decades, the war between Israel and Palestine in the name of God. So I believe that we have to consider that also, and we need to talk about it. And I believe that this should be an activity, we could even say this should be a state of policy, freedom of belief, freedom of movement, freedom of speech. And I believe that can be done, but there has to be an initiative established at the government level. I don't foresee it. It's a very important challenge. Thank you. Thank you. I believe that we've had a very fruitful dialogue. One thing, you know, to summarize, the question was, what can we do? One thing that I think is that Otilia mentioned was, you know, the seeds. She spoke about the seeds. And I believe that what we're doing here, each one of us, I believe that during a conference like this one, there's several seeds, ideas, thoughts that we obtain, that we can take to our homes and to our families and to our spheres of influence. Each one of us, we can share these ideas on how religion can be an instrument to achieve peace. Thank you very much to those who make the presentations today.
Ahora tenemos los vans van a llevarlos al hotel.
Now the vans are going to take you to the hotel. You will have a dinner and a phenomenal folk dance here. You do not miss it.